We are keeping our focus on the upcoming November election. Voters will not only be choosing their next mayor, they'll also be deciding on several ballot measures. The city's Charter Revision Commission, appointed by Mayor Adams, created 5 ballot proposals, with 3 of them focused on the city's land use process. One would fast-track the approval process for affordable housing projects in the 12 community districts that produce the least of it. Another would create an affordable housing appeals board that would have the power to overturn the city council on affordable housing decisions. Joining me now to talk more about all of this is Rachel Fee. She is the executive director of the New York Housing Conference. Welcome back to the program. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Bobby.
So we're now 10 weeks out, just about 10 weeks out from Election Day. I have a feeling most New Yorkers have not even heard about all of these ballot questions, but I suspect the New York Housing Conference has a lot to say about these 3 in particular, which are all very housing focused, right?
Absolutely. So we've been following the Charter Reform Commission really closely all year. We've testified several times, and they had public hearings in every borough. And what they came up with were really important and critical changes to approvals for how we build housing in New York City. So I think this is a really exciting opportunity for voters in November. They get to say yes to some really important changes that can allow us to build affordable housing faster in New York City.
So going through a few of them, there's 3 questions, right? The first one has to do with fast-tracking affordable housing projects. And like I mentioned, it would actually fast-track them in districts that have produced the least of it, right? So this is is this like a reaction to the NIMBYism, the not in my backyard attitude that we've seen in some corners of the city, where you can sort of counteract that?
Yes, so at New York Housing Conference, we've been tracking production of affordable housing by community district for several years. And the data shows where we're building and where we're not. So the top 10 community districts in New York in the last 11 years have produced more than half the affordable housing in all of New York City. And the bottom 12 are not doing their share. So the city council passed a fair housing framework a couple of years ago, and this is really a way to put teeth on that process. But I think the other important part of the fast track is that 100% affordable housing projects financed by the city of New York can go through a new lane, a fast track through the Board of Standards and Appeal. And that can really cut down all of the time we're waiting for the shovels to get in the ground when we're looking for approvals on affordable housing.
All right, another question would create an expedited review process for smaller, more modest zoning changes, right? What would be an example of something that would get fast-tracked under this one?
That's right. And the Charter Commission did some research on this, and what they saw was all of the proposals in ULURP, the Uniform Land Use Approval Process, or I've said it wrong, they're all for really big changes, right? A big leap in adding more residential zoning capacity. That's because the process to request this and go through the approval costs a lot of money, it takes a lot of time. And so what they wanted to do was create this kind of fast lane for small changes and just encouraging building owners to also request those small changes. So if your project needs an environmental review and it's really a significant change, it's not going to get this fast track lane. But if you want to go up to 45 feet for your building height, that might qualify.
Okay, and the big issue that we always hear about when it comes to land use approval process is member deference, right? This is the practice and tradition in the city council where basically the local council member can effectively veto any major housing project in their district. Now we're saying basically that doesn't have to be the case anymore, and there will be this new Affordable Housing Appeals Board. This is question 3 on the ballot.
That's right. So, we have seen member deference sometimes be used to the good, negotiate more affordable housing in a project, which has been great. But we've also seen projects never see the light of day. Developers go to a council member, they say, don't even propose it, don't look at that site, or they say, yeah, I'm interested, but let's wait until after my election, sit on that project for 2 years. So they have a lot of control in this process. And I think what this appeals board does is it really brings in this citywide perspective right? It's not just about someone's backyard where the land use is happening. It's that we have a housing shortage across New York City, and we really need to just change our tools that we have for approving housing so that we're taking that perspective in. So I think the appeals board is unlikely to be used that often, but I think it does encourage members to come to the table to say yes when they can to housing being proposed in their districts.
It seems like the underlying idea here is that we just need to build more housing faster, and the way that the city process runs right now, it just doesn't allow for that, right? Is that the idea?
That's right, and I think that's why this is really exciting that it's on the ballot in November, because this is one time where voters can actually make a difference and, approve these measures, change the rules that we have. And I really am feeling kind of optimistic about where we are in terms of tackling our housing shortage. We had Albany pass new tax incentives last year, both for rental housing and converting offices to housing, which is great for adding new supply. We also had the city council pass the City of Yes, so adding a little bit more residential zoning in each neighborhood. And now we have voters in the city of New York who can change the process, the approval process, make it easier, make it faster, and prioritize affordable housing.
Let me ask you about housing in the mayor's race. It has really been front and center. I mean, both because of Zohran Mamdani wanting to freeze the rent, and then more recently, we saw Andrew Cuomo saying that Zohran Mamdani should give up his rent-stabilized apartment in Queens because he makes too much money as a state assemblyman. I wonder what you make of all this, and I guess in particular, I mean, is it a valid policy discussion whether rent-stabilized housing should have some kind of means testing where you should be limited to a certain income range?
So I don't think it's very practical that we could really get there, right? We have 1 million rent-stabilized households in New York. We have a 1.4 vacancy rate citywide, right? There's not room for people to move around. And I think when you think of candidate Mamdani and his apartment in Queens, it's almost 1 in 5 apartments in Queens are rent stabilized. So, it's not, these apartments are not income restricted right now, right? It's whoever is lucky enough to be able to rent them and stay in them and benefit from slower increases in rents than the market. But I think the bottom line here is we need to add more housing because, I think the reason that comment from Cuomo struck such a nerve is that New Yorkers are paying too much of their rent on housing. They all want a deal. They want to, right? Everybody wants a deal for their rent. And I think that's really why it struck a nerve and why we need to think about what are the solutions to build more housing in New York City. That's the only way we're going to bring the rents down for everyone.
And lastly, City of Yes passed earlier this year. This has been, sort of the signature achievement for the Adams administration in terms of the ability to build more housing. Have we been able to see the impact yet, or is this really going to be a slow-moving process in terms of reforming the zoning changes?
So the changes are in place and, we never expected results overnight. It's really a new set of rules to build more housing over the next decade. So, paired with potential changes for the charter, which voters can say yes to in November, and plus these new tax incentives from Albany, I really think that we are, have the tools that we need in place to add more supply. And I think also in this mayoral race, every candidate is prioritizing adding affordable housing supply and increasing investment. So while we still have many challenges and a lot of headwinds ahead, I do think New York City right now has many of the tools lined up to really face this challenge head on. And if voters pass these charter reform proposals as well, we're really going to be able to add new housing more quickly, and a lot of that will be affordable.
I suspect you'll be out advocating for people to get on board between now and November. But for now, Rachel Fee, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much.